Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Three Simple Men Making Their Way Through the Galaxy. This week's episode is, to quote it in one of my favorite quotes in the prequel trilogy, this is where the fun begins. We dive into the Clone Wars, and we're doing this in chronological order. Season 2, Episode 16, titled Cat and Mouse. As always, I'm Tom. With me is Ryan and Mike. Fellas, how are we?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic. Let's talk about this episode.
Yeah, I just want to stress for anyone that's hopping on and is a little confused, we're on our episode 13 of Three Simple Men Making Their Way Through the Galaxy. But as you mentioned, this is Clone Wars Season 2, Episode 16, which, because it's chronological, we're skipping all of Season 1 and the first 15 episodes of Season 2, and we're going to watch this one first, or we did. And then we'll be hopping around because for those of you that don't know, the Clone Wars animated series was released, but not necessarily in chronological order. They kind of jump around with episodes. So for our watch, sticking with the chronological order. And yeah, I mean, cool episode to start off with. It throws us right into the war, right? I mean, we had started, or we last left off with kind of, begun the Clone Wars have, and sure enough, here we are with the Clone Wars, and we got our two Jedi, Anakin and Obi-Wan are no longer just Jedi, but they're generals now, right? We have General Skywalker and General Kenobi, and they're with clone army pilots. I don't know what you'd call them in this case. I guess technically they're like the Navy because they're in the ships, I think is what they go by.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought as well, because this opening scene, the battle's taking place in space. So I guess from, for what we think is a naval battle in the water, for them in the Clone Wars, the naval battles are taking place in space.
Yeah. And with that, I mean, this whole kind of premise of this episode, I know, Tom, you always like to bring it back to World War II references, but this was very much reminiscent of a World War II battle with a submarine because, well, let's get into it. So we learn that Obi-Wan has arrived with a new secret weapon for them to use, and that weapon is a stealth cloaking ship. I don't think we get a name for it, but cool ship. I feel like we should see it a lot more. I don't recall if we do ever see the ship again, but maybe we do. I've only really watched through the Clone Wars one time, so this is kind of a very refreshing rewatch for me because I don't remember it really. But yeah, very much like a U-boat or a submarine, kind of trying to be stealth and avoiding a fleet, which was very nice and kind of fun to watch because you get that kind of...
It's the red lights, the whole, like the feel of it being close quarters, and just like the whole submarine vibe, like you said, Ryan.
Yeah, and they shut off everything too. They're like, we're not just cloaked, now we're gonna shut off all the power. Don't make a noise. Like, it was very...
Let it drift through space.
Yeah. So character-wise, though, we get, I skipped over him, but we do get our boy, Senator Bail Organa, who is on this planet Christophsis?
Yep.
Christophsis. And, there seems to be a separatist barricade or fleet that is attempting to, I guess, attack this planet. And that's when the plan is arrived that Anakin is going to board this stealth ship on a supply run to get through the barricade to drop off needed supplies, while Obi-Wan sits back with the rest of the fleet, the clone fleet or Republic fleet, to attempt to, maybe come up with some sort of offensive. But then things change when a new character for us, Admiral Wolf Yularen,
Lauren, yep,
What is it? Yarlin?
yep.
You
Okay.
learn, yeah.
Yularen. When he recognizes, he says he recognizes the tactics being used, right? By the other separatist
Trench.
army.
By the commander.
That's where we find out his name is Admiral Trench, and he is I'm not sure his species, someone might know it, but he's like a giant wolf spider kind of a thing going on.
Like a tarantula, because I
Tarantula,
was
yeah.
looking at behind the scenes stuff about this episode. So
Can I just make a quick joke, like Harry Potter wise? It's Ron Weasley's nightmare.
Yeah. So Mike, you said you did some of the behind the
yeah,
scenes.
so actually, like his first name behind the scenes was Admiral Taranch for tarantula, but then
Makes
they
sense.
made it. Then they changed it to Admiral Trench during production. So yeah, you definitely see that big spider reference and going to
Yeah. What's he doing, Mike?
Dude, do it again. Do it again.
What was that?
Come on, do it again, please. That was so good. That was spot on.
All right.
Yeah, no, we get the
But,
first introduction of a separatist commander because normally you would think it'd be when we last watched Attack of the Clones, we see Count Dooku, we see, the separatist leaders, but now we get a first commander and yeah, Admiral Trench or Admiral Yularen was like, well, wait a minute, hang on here, let's hold up the ship so I can meet up with Anakin and give him my recon assessment. So Ryan, I'll let you go into that.
Yeah, so one, we have Admiral Trench, but then we also have him talking with, I think, our first appearance of a tactical droid too, which is kind of cool. They're droids that basically just come up with military tactics. But then we hear reference to the thought that Admiral Trench was, I believe the term they used was evaporated in the Battle of Malastare Narrows.
yeah,
Which I don't know, is that a Clone Wars battle or is that just supposed to be like something previously? Because Anakin says he read about it in his history, but Admiral Wolf seemed to act like he was there.
It seemed like it may have been like, I mean, who knows how, timeline wise where we are in the Clone Wars, because this could probably be like an early, maybe one of the first battles of the Clone Wars itself, because like obviously Anakin has been made a Jedi Knight between the ending of Attack of the Clones in this first episode, so maybe the Jedi weren't involved as much because he makes a reference that yes, he was part of this Malastare battle, and once a Jedi strike force came in, so that's when he was supposedly killed. But he's like, well, not every captain goes down with the ship. So it looks like it could have been an early battle, and who knows what involvement the Jedi had at the time. Like maybe maybe Anakin wasn't on that campaign or something. But
Gotcha.
Also, just to let be clear, we're covering the Clone Wars animated series stuff that Disney's offering, because there is an older version of the Clone Wars that was originally aired during Cartoon Network. So there's a lot of other battles that took place during that, and but just going back a little bit, we're talking about Trench, we're talking about Yularen. We're also seeing new ships. We're seeing new separatist ships instead of the Trade Federation. We're also finally, for the first time, we're seeing the Venator class of Republic cruisers. We're like you said, Ryan. We're seeing Chrysopolis, a new planet. We're getting thrown into the Clone Wars now. This is, he said, become the Clone Wars has. So now, moving forward, it's just going to be a roller coaster. You're going to see new stuff. Everything's going to go up and down. Whether it's going to be good stuff, bad stuff.
We also see the clones with different designs on their helmets and stuff, right? The ones on this stealth ship, they kind of had like some cool like markings and stuff. So that's kind of fun too, and not something we've really seen at all yet chronologically. And then I'd also say in release order too. We never really saw like customizations of the helmets, right? That wasn't something, well, clones or stormtroopers or anything like that, you know. Not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but it's kind of cool that we start seeing, you know, the personalities coming out. We also get introduced to Commander Cody, who is going to be a reoccurring character. He's in this hanging out with Obi-Wan, so that was kind of cool. And then yeah, with that, I mean, we get this kind of fun, the episode's called Cat and Mouse, right? Oh, I'm sorry. So I totally forgot about this. Um it just so happens this episode I pulled two quotes, but my quote job is going to be pretty easy for the foreseeable future because for those who haven't watched the Clone Wars series before, each episode starts off with a quote. And we should also talk about the other thing it starts off with, which again, I kind of mentioned the submarines being very reminiscent of World War II. Every Clone Wars episode, it starts off with a quote, but then it also starts off with like a newsreel from the front, which is it's a reference to back during World War II. Reels would get sent home and they'd get played in movie theaters before the actual movie would start or whatever was there to be viewed. And it'd be footage from the front, and you'd have this very like, I might try to do it, it's not going to be good, but you have this very like, why we fight on the front, the boys are, and it's like kind of a voice like
Fire
that.
bonds. Don't let
That's
Hitler mean business.
And that's kind of how they start each episode. So we kind of get a quick like what has happened so far in the war of the Clone Wars, which is really cool, really fun kind of thing they do. But then we get the quote. So the opening quote for this episode was, "A wise leader knows when to follow." So after watching the episode, it seems to be like the quote itself seems to be calling Anakin wise. I mean, he disobeyed orders. He was ordered by Obi-Wan, directly ordered to go quietly and stealthily to the planet to deliver supplies, and instead he decides that the only chance they have on the planet is if he attacks and he fights. So he chooses to disregard the orders and doesn't follow. And in this case, it turned out to be the right thing. What I found interesting, I'm babbling without letting you guys talk, sorry, but
Okay.
the last thing I want to get into with all that is this is, you know, our first look at the Clone Wars, and this is the first time we're actually seeing, you know, the Jedi, besides kind of the what threw together real quick at the end of the last movie, working in this kind of sense where they're soldiers, right? They're now fighting in a war as opposed to what they used to do. So you do have more of this military tactics, military, you know, direct orders. You know, if they're both generals, whose order do you have to listen to? The admirals seem to call the admiral seems to call the general Jedi's sir. So it gets interesting, the chain of command. But I find it kind of cool that we're seeing Anakin in this situation, and it makes me kind of wonder, you know, would Anakin have turned out differently? Do we think he would have, you know, again, without fully spoiling where he turns out, but come on. But you know, do you think if his upbringing wasn't during war, things would be different, right? Like he's kind of got a unique because I'm assuming most Jedi don't grow up in, or, you know, learn the Force and do all that during wartime. But in this case, he kind of has to.
It's a very interesting aspect that you're bringing up now. It's like more of like a what if. Like, what if he followed those orders and he just dropped off the supplies? Because we're looking at this scene where it's just pretty much like the tactical droids, just like a day and a half or half a day's rotation, and they got it done. Okay, you give them the supplies, but the planet's sealed off from separatists, naval blockade, and the droids can mass produce their army faster than clones can be produced. Getting a little ahead of that, but it's just so you're pretty much, it's like a what if it's like, all right, Anakin doesn't do what he does, then you're just delaying another, like, the defeat of the Republic in a sense, and going towards, him being brought up during wartime. It's like, what if all the younger Jedi who are, just getting thrown into, into wartime, it's just like right off the bat, it's just pretty much you got to go, you got to fight and do this because you've been mentioning World War II, man. It's just pretty much like it's like the end days of World War II with Germany. It's just pretty much even kids who were like 13, 14 at the time who weren't supposed to be in war. They're like, well, Russia is pretty much at the doorstep. America's on the other side. I don't care. You got to go.
Yeah, I mean, just like going on that, just like obviously with most Jedi, their upbringings like during a peaceful time. And I'll just do a throwback to an episode 2 quote where Mace Windu said, "We're keepers of the peace, not soldiers." So you see very quickly how far, the Jedi are changing tactics now, where they're in charge of clone armies now, and they're given the orders along with their admiral. So there's definitely that instance, and obviously with Anakin, you kind of see that dichotomy. Although he's a Jedi Knight now, he's still kind of like, well, I'm not going to listen to Obi-Wan's orders because Obi-Wan, when he drops out of hyperspace, is like, well, I explicitly gave orders for Anakin not to attack, and here he is going charging in. They might have lost like a supply ship and had some damage to the cruiser. So you just see that rubbing off that, yeah, although Anakin's a Jedi Knight, he's independent from that master Padawan relationship. We kind of see that brotherhood develop as we go throughout the Clone Wars of this back and forth between Obi-Wan. And even when like Obi-Wan's communicating with Anakin over the hologram, he's like, well, I'm just going to do this way. It's like, Anakin, reminder, you're still on a mercy mission to drop off these supplies. He's like, no, we need to change. No, I'd rather go on the offensive on this one since I have a stealth ship. So,
And I think that's going to be one of those things that's going to play down later down the road, because I think going to, the whole dynamic between master and apprentice is pretty much like, Obi-Wan still wants to maintain that relationship, master and apprentice, try to teach him lessons, to learn, to grow as a Jedi. But it's going to be very difficult with war just happening all around the galaxy, where it's just pretty much like Obi-Wan's more about, teaching and learning and, giving wisdom, while Anakin's about glory and victory and, saving the Republic, trying to save people, because remember his backstory. He was a slave on Tatooine. Like, so that's always going to be a part of his identity, and it's going to be a huge thing later down during the war.
Yeah. Now, we do get my other quote that I wrote down that's not cheating because it wasn't the one in the beginning, but absolutely have to point this out because we will hear some version of this again. But we do get Bail Organa from the planet on the hologram reaching out to Obi-Wan, and he says, "Help us, General Kenobi. You're our only hope," which we will hear again.
I'm surprised it took us this long to mention it, to be honest.
I know. I had it written down, but very fun that they, that they throw that in there. And for those of you that happen to be watching this in chronological order and haven't seen everything else, you'll know why that's fun and why it's also quite important that Anakin did decide to disobey the orders, not just to protect the planet, but arguably saving Senator Bail Organa's life. And we know Senator Bail Organa becomes a pretty important, is an important character for our story. So it's kind of interesting that if Anakin just obeyed orders, who knows, maybe those bombing runs would have continued, and we might have lost Senator Bail Organa.
And I think that's going to get into my hot take too. Is pretty much it's pretty much when those droids got sent down to bomb Organa, Senator Organa, is pretty much. It wasn't just, try to secure the victory on the ground. I think the second reason, the unexplained intention, was to keep drawing out the Jedi, because I think Trench was just growing impatient. He's just like, I know they're recouping, they're regrouping and stuff, but it's more of like, I'm a tactician. I've got them on the run. How do I draw them out to secure the victory? So I think there was I think that was a second intention about that bombing mission.
Absolutely. I also you mentioned them. They Trench referred to the bomber droids as hyena bombers.
Hmm.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because like you see like Anakin just like flip the switch because like when you see the bombers coming in, Anakin just like let the engines drift, let's turn all power off, thinking that the bombers were coming for them. But once he gets the message from Obi-Wan that you need to get down to the planet, it's like that's when he's just like, all right, I'm turning this into an attack. So and he's like ready, like prep the torpedoes, like get ready, charge the shields, everything. And Obi-Wan's like, no, get back to the mission, and it just completely changes Anakin's focus. Like you said, just that bombing run just was mainly to draw the Jedi out because both Trench and the droid were thinking it's like what's taking them so long. Like they've got the formation, everything all set, and then just like having that additional reconnaissance from Admiral Yularen about these are familiar tactics. We should be careful about this. And Anakin's like, nope. I want instead of focusing on the planet, I want them to focus on us. So you just see that complete 180 where he's on the offensive now with the stealth ship.
And this is a commander of the Separatist army who's led by Count Dooku. So, you're giving orders, but you're also taking orders from Count Dooku. So Dooku's probably got specific instructions for their, generals and admirals about how to deal with Jedi, how to draw them in.
And
This
not to mention that he actually followed orders because he's like, well, our orders are to maintain the blockade, not chase them. So definitely a different change, comparing a Trench to an Anakin for this one. So you're
yeah.
right.
With that, I mean, we do get this I feel like a very, very common kind of scene, right? That I feel like we've seen many times in other, maybe not just Star Wars, other films, other shows, but the torpedoes are locked on to the magnetic field. Anakin then uses that to have the torpedoes follow him as he makes a kind of death run for the ship that fired them, pulling up at the last minute, and the torpedoes destroying the ship, potentially killing Admiral Trench. We don't know. I mean, it looked pretty bad. The ship blew up, but apparently he was supposed to be evaporated in Malstar Narrows and survived that. So who knows how many lives he has. But so that was kind of fun. And the only other thing that I can think of, and if anybody else has anything, please go ahead. But we get very, very, very small amount, but it starts, and it's going to be a very reoccurring theme throughout the Clone Wars. We get a little humanity to the clones, right? We get we get a little characteristics. We have one who's like kind of new to the ship and is basically being told like, oh, working under General Skywalker that we're always on the offensive, and you kind of get this little bantering. And I think it's an important juxtaposition because we are going to have the kind of difference at the end of the day. I mean, you look at these, besides Trench, the Separatist army that we saw, they're all droids, right? And besides Admiral Yularen and our two Jedi and a senator, it's all clones on the other side. So you kind of get this at first kind of showing that you have these soldiers on both sides that are manufactured, right? You have droids that are built, and as Tom said, they could keep building more. I think C3PO said it last film, droids building droids. Oh, something along those lines. And then you have clones that are just being built too. So it's easy to kind of forget that, or to look at these, and I'm sure on a geopolitical scale, the majority of the Republic sees it the same way as, oh, well, it's not the children and the family or the parents, and it's not people going off and dying in these battles. It's clones. We can just make more, they're expendable. And same thing with the droids. So, and the theme we're going to see throughout this is showing us that, the the clones do have humanity. They do have characteristics, and we might
They're not
even see
droids.
they're
They're
not
pretty
they're
much
not they're not droids. So we're gonna see how that comes into play, and what that means. So I'm very excited for that. I think that's gonna give us a whole lot of interesting hot takes and things to talk about.
absolutely. I mean, with the clones, they're going to be. We'll see it later down the road with later episodes. We're going to see why they're not droids. Like why they're going to be so special. Why uh, they're very valuable for the Republic, for the Jedi, and they're going to show their skill. They're going to show their intelligence. They're going to show everything about them that it's going to where they truly believe that they're superior to droids.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you could tell right off the bat is like, with these droids, you would call them by a unit or a number, but with the clones, they first start off with the introduction of CT-1284, but his name is Spark. So to what you two are talking about, we're definitely going to see a lot of humanity with this, and the fact that these clones have a name or a nickname to them versus being called a designation number, we'll definitely see a lot of that as we explore. And then another relationship that we see develop is with Anakin and Admiral Yularen at the end, because he with Admiral Yularen, he's being very careful about it. And then at the end, he's like, "Well, Anakin, your skills are reckless, but it's something I respect." And then he also makes a reference to the Chancellor. So, like, obviously, we kind of
Also
see
going to be another reoccurring thing.
yeah, so we'll see like Anakin getting along with people, but obviously there's like oh well, Palpatine spoke very highly of you, not like Obi-Wan or Mace Windu or Yoda spoke very highly. No, it's directly from the Chancellor. So we'll definitely see that not only just seeing the clones develop, but we see like Anakin's relationships develop beyond like Obi-Wan, Padme, Palpatine, the Jedi. So
All right, with that, anything else, fellas?
try to do that Admiral Trench thing, but oh well, another time perhaps.
Do it actually. You know what? I want you to do it again.
Oh, it's okay. I'm definitely clipping that and posting that on Instagram.
Yes.
No, he can't do it under pressure. All right, Mike, take it away, buddy.
All right, that's a wrap. Well, thank you everyone for watching Three Simple Men making their way through the galaxy. Hit that like, comment, and subscribe button. And tune in for next week's episode of the Clone Wars, where we actually make the jump from season 2 into season 1 with Clone Wars. Let's see, season 1, episode 16, The Hidden Enemy. May the Force be with you.
Yeah.
Always.